The salt air hit me like a slap that first morning on the docks, thick with the tang of seaweed and diesel. I wasn't used to it yet, new to this spit of land where the ocean chewed up the horizon. But there she was, bent over the splintered wood, her hand clamped around her forearm where the net had torn into her skin. Blood pooled dark and slick on the planks, mixing with the fish scales. Her jaw clenched tight, eyes narrowed against the sting, but she wouldn't cry out. No one else around in this forgotten town. No doctor, no kin close enough. Just me, the greenhorn they'd hired for deckhand grunt work. I knelt without thinking, fetched the rag from my pocket and pressed it to the gash. Her flinch was quick, but she held still as I wiped away the mess, the warmth of her skin under my fingers pulling something tight in my chest. That night, sleep wouldn't come easy. I'd only been in Harrow's Bend a week when it happened. The town clung to the coast like barnacles on a hull, all weathered shacks and men who eyed newcomers like chum in the water. I'd fled the city noise for this. Steady work on the boats, hands calloused from ropes instead of keyboards. The job was simple. Haul lines, mend nets, keep the decks clear. But the captain, old Harlan, had taken a shine to my quiet way, pairing me with Riley most days. She was the best fisher on the fleet, or so the whispers went, tough as the nor'easters that battered these shores, running her family's old trawler since her father drowned in a squall 10 years back. I spotted her that morning before the sun crested the breakwater. She was out early, wrestling a tangle of nets from the hold, her sleeves rolled to the elbows. Riley had that look about her, broad shoulders from years of pulling weight, dark hair cropped short and wind-whipped, skin tanned to leather. But it was her hands that caught me first, weathered, knuckles scarred from hooks and lines, fingers long and sure. Until the net snagged wrong. One twist, and the jagged edge ripped across her forearm, deep enough to split muscle. She cursed low, a single sharp word that cut through the gull cries, and dropped the coil, blood welling fast. I was close, stacking crates nearby. "Let me see," I said, stepping over without asking. She straightened, pressing her other hand to the wound, but it seeped through her fingers anyway. Her eyes met mine, defiant, gray like storm clouds, daring me to make a fuss. "I can handle it myself," she snapped, voice rough as gravel. Pride laced every syllable, the kind that said she'd sooner bleed out than show weakness in a place like this. But Harlan was yelling from the wheelhouse, engine rumbling to life, and the tide wouldn't wait. I didn't back off. "Not with that mess. You'll get it infected out here." She glared, but the pain pinched her face, and she didn't pull away when I guided her to the edge of the dock, away from the crew's stares. The boat shack was a 10-minute hike up the bluff, stuffed with rusting tools and half-empty med kits. I fetched what I could, a bottle of iodine that burned my nose, clean rags from the rag bin, tape and gauze pilfered from the first aid box. She sat on an upturned crate the whole time, silent, watching me like I might bolt with the supplies. Back on the dock, the wind picked up, carrying the chill off the waves. I melt again, closer now, her knee brushing my shoulder. "This'll sting," I warned, pouring the iodine over the gash. She hissed through her teeth, arm tensing under my grip, but held steady. The cut was ugly, jagged, about 4 inches, flesh parted white where the blood had washed away. I steadied her arm with one hand, the muscle firm and warm beneath the skin, veins standing out like ropes. Her flinch came not from the pain, I think, but from the touch, unspoken pride warring with necessity. We were strangers, after all, 2 women alone in the salt and shadow. My fingers careful as I pressed the rag to staunch the flow, then wrapped the gauze tight. Her breath came shallow, close enough I could smell the faint brine on her. She pulled back first, flexing her fingers, testing the bandage. "Tight enough," she muttered. No thanks, just a nod that felt like grudging permission. The crew hollered for us then, and she stood, favoring the arm but refusing my offered hand. I watched her go, the pull in my gut unfamiliar. Duty, sure, but laced with something quieter, like the fog rolling in off the bay. By morning, the bandage needed changing. The next dawn broke gray and heavy, the kind that seeps into your bones before the coffee hits. I found Riley at the dock's edge, staring at the water, her bandaged arm slung across her chest. The gauze had spotted through overnight, a dull red bloom against the white. She didn't turn when I approached, just nodded at the crate beside her. Sit if you want. I did, pulling the med kit from my pack. No arguments this time. She extended her arm, rolling up the sleeve with her good hand, the motion careful, like testing a frayed line. I unwrapped the old dressing slow, the air sharp with salt and the faint rot of low tide. The gash looked angry, edges puckered, but no fever heat under the skin. Good sign. She watched my hands, not the wound, her gray eyes steady. The iodine bit again, and she gripped the crate's edge, knuckles whitening. I worked quick after that. Clean rag, fresh gauze, tape pulled taut. Her skin was warm, marked with old scars like a map of close calls. When I finished, she flexed her fingers, testing. Better. Thanks. We fell into rhythm after that. Dawn hauls every day, the fleet pushing out before the light strengthened. I'd board her trawler, the Sea Wren, its deck scarred from years of drag and drop. Harlan paired us permanent now, said I had a steady hand for the lines. Riley called the shots, where to cast, how to coil. I'd haul the nets with her, the weight pulling at my shoulders, fish thrashing silver in the mesh. Amid the guts and scales, I'd check her arm between pulls. Lift your sleeve. She'd grumble but comply, the wound a constant in our work. Her talk came guarded at first, words doled out like bait. One morning, as we motored back with a middling catch, she leaned on the rail, wind tugging her hair. This town's been fishing these waters since my grandfolks, lost more than we've kept. She spoke of hauls gone wrong, storms that swallowed boats whole, nets torn by rocks the charts missed. Her voice stayed even, but her eyes drifted to the horizon, like seeing ghosts in the waves. I listened, gutting caught at the stern, knife slipping through scales. Lost my dad that way. Squall hit fast. She nodded. No pity, just a shared quiet. Happens. I watched her close those days. Strength showed in the limp she hid, favoring the arm, but never slowing. She'd brace against the roll of the boat, body taut like a line under strain. Her silence wrapped around us like fog off the bay, thick, muffling the crew's shouts from other vessels. It wasn't empty, that quiet. It held the creak of wood, the slap of water, her breath steady beside mine. I caught myself noting the way sweat traced her neck, the set of her jaw when a knot resisted. A week in, she made a small concession. We were knee-deep in the hold, sorting the catch, fish blood slick underfoot. Her bandage had loosened during a heavy lift, fraying at the edges. I saw it catch on a hook, tugged loose. Blood welled fresh. Stop. Let me. She hesitated, knife paused mid-gut, then set it down. All right. I knelt right there, amid the guts, the metallic tang mixing with brine. Rolled her sleeve higher, cleaned the seep with a rag dipped in seawater, fresh enough for now. Her arm rested heavy in my lap, muscle shifting under my fingers as I rewrapped. The tape stuck firm, but her skin lingered warm against my thigh. She didn't pull away quick. Shared labor bound us tighter after that. Gutting the catch became our task, side by side at the rail. Knives flashing, entrails plopping into buckets, the boat rocking steady. Our hands would brush, hers passing a fish, mine steadying the blade. Once, reaching for the same cod, our knuckles grazed, rough skin on rough. She didn't flinch, just meant my eyes a beat longer. The pull hit me then, sharp in the gut. Why this? Beyond duty, the hauling and mending. Her nearness stirred something, like the tide pulling under the boat. Not just fixing her up, wanting her whole. Days blurred, the routine a grind of salt and strain. But the fog between us thinned, just a bit. She'd toss me a line without asking, or share a nod over a good haul. Still, questions gnawed at me in the quiet hours. Why her resilience hooked me deeper than the work demanded. Then the storm hit. Wind howling off the Atlantic, forcing us into closer quarters on the Wren. The storm rolled in like a grudge, black clouds swallowing the afternoon light. We were out on the Wren when the first gusts hit, rain lashing the deck in sheets. Riley shouted orders over the howl, her voice cutting the chaos. But the waves swelled fast, tossing the boat like driftwood. We secured the lines, battened the hold, but the engine sputtered against the churn. No choice but to ride it out, head back to the cabin, the small wheelhouse that doubled as shelter. Salt spray stung my face as I helped her below. Her bad arm braced against the rail. The door slammed shut behind us, sealing out the roar, but the world outside battered on. Inside, the air hung thick, damp with the scent of wet wood and oil. The lantern swung from its hook, casting flickering shadows that danced across the bulkheads. Waves crashed against the hull, a relentless thud that shook the floorboards. We stripped our soaked jackets, water pooling at our feet. Riley slumped onto the bench, her shirt clinging dark, but I saw the bloom of red spreading across the sleeve. The wound had reopened in the scramble, torn by the strain, blood seeping through the bandage like ink in water. She pressed her palm to it, jaw set, but her face paled under the flickering light. I grabbed the medkit from the locker, hands steady despite the roll. "Let me look." She shook her head, eyes fixed on the porthole where foam lashed the glass. "It's fine." But her voice cracked, thinner than the wind. The boat lurched, and she winced, arm dropping. Blood trickled now, warm and metallic in the close air. Pride held her tongue, but pain sharpened it, etched in the lines around her mouth, the way her breath hitched. I knelt in front of her, the floor slick under my knees. This isn't the time for stubborn. She met my eyes then, gray depths stormy, and something gave. "Hurts worse than I thought," she admitted, low, like confessing to the dark. Pain sharper than pride, finally. I peeled back the shirt sleeve careful, the fabric sticking wet. The gash had split wider, edges ragged, blood welling fresh with each pulse. No time for the dock supplies. This needed closing, or infection would set in with the damp. The kit had needle and thread, gut from some old repair, but my hands shook a touch as I threaded it by lantern glow. "Stitches?" she asked, voice tight. I nodded. "Best I can do out here." She leaned back against the bulkhead, arm extended, the lantern's flicker playing over her skin, veins taut, muscle quivering faint. The boat groaned with another wave, but she held still, breath shallow. I boiled water over the small stove, steam rising thick, then soaked a washcloth in the brackish stuff. Dipped it cool first, wiping the blood away in slow passes. Her skin warmed under the cloth, scars old and new mapping her forearm like tide lines. She watched, silent, the lantern light hollowing her cheeks. Iodine next, the bite making her grip the bench, knuckles bone white. Then the needle, pierced slow, thread pulling the edges together. 1 stitch, 2, her breath sinking with mine in the dim. Sweat beaded her brow, but she didn't flinch, just exhaled sharp on the 4th pull. The air between us thickened, close as the cabin walls, her pulse visible under my fingers. By the 8th, it held, a crude line of black against her skin. I tied off, taped a fresh pad over, my hands lingering to check the tension. The boat settled a fraction, waves easing to a growl. She flexed her fingers, testing, then looked up. Our gazes held, the lantern's flicker caught in her eyes, breaths shared in the hush. Time stretched, the storm's roar fading to background. Vulnerability cracked through. Her hand covered mine, rough palm warm, holding a beat too long. "Thanks," she whispered, voice rough, the word hanging soft. First crack in the wall, her touch an anchor in the sway. I pulled back slow, heart thudding like the hull. She didn't let go right away. Calm returned by midnight, the wind dropping to whispers, but the distance between us shortened, just a fraction. The storm's fury broke by dawn, leaving the bay slick and silver under a pale sky. We motored the Wren back to harbor slow, the engine's rumble steady now, air cleared of salt lash. Riley stood at the wheel, her stitched arm braced light on the rail, gaze fixed ahead. The cabin's closeness lingered in my skin, the heat of her under my hands, that whispered thanks echoing quiet. She didn't speak of it, just nodded when I offered to tie off the lines. Distance had shortened, threads pulling taut between us. But the work waited. docks calling us back to rhythm. We hit the planks by mid-morning, the fleet buzzing with storm tails and damage checks. Nets hung limp from poles, torn in places, fish scales crunching underfoot like brittle snow. Riley led the way to the repair shed, her limp faint but there, boot scraping wood. "Grab the twine," she said over her shoulder, voice even, like the night hadn't cracked her open. I followed, the medkit slung in my pack just in case. Inside, the air smelled of hemp and tar, benches cluttered with hooks and shears. We spread the nets out, her good hand pointing flaws, rips from rocks, frays from the surge. She guided me through it, patient in her way. Loop here, pull tight, don't let it slack. Her fingers worked the knots sure, even with the bandage stiffening her reach. I mirrored her, twine biting into my palms, the rhythm sinking ours. She'd lean close to correct a twist, breath warm on my neck, her shadow falling over the mesh. The stitches held, no fresh blood. But I watched for strain, the way her shoulder tensed on heavy pulls. Trust built in those hours, her teaching without words, me learning the feel of lines that wouldn't snap. Afternoon dragged, sun cutting through clouds, but we talked more as the nets mended. I shared first, unspooling my own thread while splicing a seam. Came from the city lights, too bright, too fast. Needed solid ground under me, something that didn't shift. She paused, needle hovering, gray eyes flicking up. "What chased you?" I shrugged, twine twisting in my lap. Noise in my head, mostly. Job gone sour, people who talked big but held nothing. This, hauling, mending, it feels real. She nodded slow, like weighing anchor. Real breaks you sometimes, but it mends too. Her stories came then, guarded but steady, as we worked side by side. "Family nets," she said. "Passed down since her grandfolks staked this claim. These waters took my pa, but they gave too. Full holds in summer, enough to winter through." Hidden losses threaded her words. A brother lost to the bottle after the squall. A hull gone bad that near sank the wren. She spoke of it plain, no self-pity, just the weight of salt in her voice. Lost a season once, rocks snagged the whole spread. Had to start over, thread by thread. I listened, hands busy, her losses mirroring the city's hollows I'd fled. The shed felt smaller, our knees brushing as we reached for shared tools. Out on the docks again, the repairs done, we tested the nets, hauling test weights across uneven planks that warped from years of swell. The wood groaned underfoot, slick with moisture, and her limp caught once, boot slipping on a seam. I was there quick, arm slipping around her waist to steady. "Got you." Her weight leaned in, solid and warm, hip against mine, the scent of tar and sea clinging to her shirt. She didn't pull away right off, just exhaled, hand gripping my shoulder brief. Proximity like that, close enough to feel her pulse through fabric, stirred the air thick. Days stacked like that, labor, weaving us closer. One evening, as we coiled the last net, my knot slipped clumsy, twine unraveling in a heap. She snorted, a rare sound, half laugh, half scoff, like a calf on ice. I grinned, heat rising, and flicked the loose end at her. "Show me then, expert." She demonstrated, fingers deft, but exaggerated slow, her mouth quirking at the corner. Laughter broke then, subtle shift. Hers slow and rough, mine lighter, echoing off the water. The shed's dim held it a moment, eyes meeting without the storm's shadow. Devotion stirred deep in those beats, watching her unyielding grip on the lines, the way she braced against the world's pull. Not just duty anymore, mending nets, checking stitches, admiring the grit that held her whole, wanting to shore it up. Her resilience hooked me, quiet and sure, like the tide claiming shore. The injury healed slow, stitches out by week's end, scar fading pink. But the visits persisted, me checking in, her not turning away. Weeks passed, the scar on Riley's arm knitting tight, a thin pink line, like a healed seam in sailcloth. The wren ran smooth again, hauls steady, but the air on the docks thickened with something new. Whispers started low, carried on the wind like gull calls. Two women too close on the water, always paired, hands lingering over lines. I'd catch sidelong glances from the crew, old salts with brows furrowed, mutters about unnatural in this tight-knit bend where folks married kin and kept to the old ways. Harlan clapped my shoulder once, eyes sharp. Keep it professional, girl. No accusation, but the weight hung. Riley heard it too, her jaw set harder at the fuel pumps, nods curt to the wives gathering clams at low tide. She withdrew sharp after that, like a line pulled taut and snapping back. Mornings on the boat, she'd snap at my offers. I got the nets, she'd say, voice edged, yanking the coil herself even as her shoulder strained. Eyes avoided mine, fixed on the horizon or the deck planks, gray depths shuddered. No more shared laughs over slipped knots, just silence broken by the slap of waves. I'd reach to steady her on a roll, and she'd shrug off, rough. Don't need coddling. The pull between us frayed, her distance a cold draft through the cabin. I felt it in the gut, ache building like a bruise, questioning the want that had rooted deep. Was it the labor, the salt-shared days, or her unyielding quiet that hooked me? Beyond duty, the mending. Wanting her near, the warmth of her skin under my fingers, the way her breath synced in storm hush. But the town pressed, judgment like barnacles on the hull. One evening, after a long haul, the sun dipped red into the bay. I found her in the shed, alone. The scar had itched her that day, she said later. Old skin pulling tight under sweat. She sat on the bench, sleeve rolled, picking at the edge with a nail. Blood beaded faint, not deep, but enough to draw me in. Let me, I said soft, kneeling like before. She hesitated, eyes flicking to the door, but nodded once. The air smelled of tar and dusk, lantern unlit, just the fading light slanting through cracks. I fetched the kit from the corner, clean rag dampened from the bucket. Her arm rested heavy in my lap again, muscle warm, the scar ridged under my thumb. I cleaned slow, tracing the line with the cloth, blood wiping away to pink. Her breath caught faint, but she held still, gaze on the wall. My fingers followed the scar's path, old and new marks blending. Fades, but doesn't vanish. She shifted, knee brushing mine, the contact sparking quiet. The want ached sharper then, unspoken, thickening the shed's dim. Why pull away now? The town's eyes, or fear of what brewed between us? I pressed the gauze gentle, tape sticking firm, but my hand lingered, tracing the edge where skin met scar. Soft, unintended. Her pulse jumped under my touch. This isn't just fixing you, I said, voice low, the words spilling before I could reel them. Confronted the quiet head-on, heart thudding like waves on rock. Her eyes met mine then, storm brewing, gray roiled, searching. Flinch came quick, arm pulling back sharp, chair scraping wood. What do you mean? Rough, but cracked at the edge. I stood slow, space yawning between. The way I watch, the pull. It's more. Silence stormed in, heavy as fog, her face paling in the half-light. She turned away, shoulders taut, no answer, just the creak of the shed settling. Distance widened again, her withdrawal a wall rebuilt higher. I left her there, the ache settling deep, questions churning like tide pools. The harvest moon rose full that night, pulling us out alone on the Wren, nets down for a quiet drift. The Wren cut through the bay smooth under the harvest moon, its glow spilling silver across the water like spilled scales. We've cast off after the shed's silence, Riley at the wheel without a word, just a nod toward the open sea. Nets down for a quiet drift. No haul tonight, just the pull of tide and the moon's weight hanging full. I stood at the rail, wind cool on my face, the town's lights fading to pinpricks behind. She killed the engine, the sudden hush broken only by the lap of waves against the hull. Stars pricked sharp overhead, sharper than hooks, the sky vast and unyielding. We drifted, boat rocking gentle, the world narrowing to wood and water. She joined me at the rail after a time, shoulder brushing mine, the contact deliberate now. Her bandaged arm, no, the scar, rested easy, moon catching the faint line. Couldn't sleep with the whispers, she said low, voice blending with the slosh. I nodded, the ache from the shed still raw. Her hand found my knee then, rough palm settling warm through denim, a memory of the wound's care, fingers tracing edges, skin yielding under touch. It anchored me, that weight, pulling the unspoken to the surface. The boat creaked, stars wheeling slow, her thumbs circling faint, unintentional. Fears spilled out in the quiet, words traded like bait in the dark. Town's eyes burn, she murmured, gaze on the horizon where moon met sea. Two women drifting too close, judgment like a squall, waiting to capsize. I felt it too, the weight of sidelong looks, mutters curling like fog off the docks. Hearts adrift, she called it, mine tangled in hers, pulling against the current of what folks expected. Grew up hiding, she added, hand tightening. Pa's drownings, Ruther's drift, can't lose more to whispers. Her voice cracked faint, vulnerability from the storm night resurfacing, the cabin's hush where breaths synced. I covered her hand with mine, scars rough against scars. They see what they want, but this, us, it's solid, like the wren's keel. The moon climbed higher, bathing the deck in pale, the air thick with salt and unspoken want. I turned to her, faces close, the pull undeniable now. I'll stay through the haul, I vowed, words steady as line in hand. Storms, whispers, the grind, whatever breaks, I'll mend with you. Her gray eyes searched mine, storm clouds parting, the devotion in them mirroring my own. Time stretched, boat drifting lazy, the world beyond the rail blurring. The kiss came tentative, my lips brushing hers soft, salt lingering from the day's spray. She tasted of brine and resolve, mouth yielding slow under mine. The world narrowed sharp, stars fading, waves muting, to the press of her. Hand sliding to my neck, pulling closer. Heat built quiet, her breath hitching against my cheek, bodies leaning into the rail's edge. Tongues met hesitant, then sure, the ache from days of distance uncoiling like a freed net. Her fingers clutched my shirt, knuckles grazing skin, the scar's warmth pressing near. She leaned in deeper, response a quiet fire. Devotion acknowledged in the way she held, no pullback, just surrender to the drift. Didn't expect this, she whispered against my lips, forehead to mine, breaths mingling hot. The moon watched, indifferent, as we clung, the wren rocking witness to the shift. Hearts no longer adrift, tethered now in the salt hush. But dawn crept gray on the horizon, bringing reality's weight. The dock's waiting, whispers sharpening with light. Dawn broke cold over the bay, the wren's deck slick with dew as we tied off at the dock. Riley's hand slipped from mine, the moon's warmth fading like mist under sun. Reality pressed in, the creak of lines, the first crew voices calling out from other boats. We moved separate, her shoulder brushing mine once before she stepped ahead, boots thudding wood. The kiss lingered in my skin, salt and heat, but the town's eyes waited, sharp as hooks. Her brother showed up that afternoon, unannounced, striding down the planks with his fisherman's gait, face weathered like Riley's but harder, lines etched deeper. Tom ran the next boat over, family ties binding tight in Harrow's Bend. He'd heard the whispers, no doubt, nets mended too close, drifts under the moon. He cornered us by the fuel pumps, Riley wiping down the rail, me coiling ropes nearby. "What's this?" he said, voice low but pointed, eyes flicking between us. "You two out late last night. Folks talk." Riley straightened, jaw tight, the scar on her arm catching light, a faint pink reminder. Just checking lines, she replied even, but her stance shifted, protective. Tom's questions dug deeper, laced with the town's old weight. You know how it is here. Women on the water, fine for work. But closer? He glanced at me, doubt shadowing his gaze, like I was chum drawing trouble. Don't drag her into the mess, newcomer. Riley's hand clenched the rag, knuckles white. Mind your haul, Tom. This ain't your net. Tension thickened the air, diesel fumes mixing with brine, his boots scraping as he leaned in. Pa wouldn't stand for it. Family's all we got. The words hung, intrusion sharp as a gut hook, pulling at the bonds we'd just tethered. He left with a shake of his head, but his look lingered, warning etched plain. Dock gossip swelled after that, a low current under the daily grind. Sidelong looks from the crew sharpened, old Harlan pausing mid-haul, brows knit as we worked side by side. Mutters drifted on the wind. Too chummy, or what are they drifting for? Wives at the market stalls whispered when we passed, eyes narrowing over baskets of clams. Doubts muttered like prayers against the tide. One evening, as we unloaded the catch, a salt named Jed sidled up, voice gravel. Heard you two moondrifted. Careful, town don't bend easy. Riley snapped back. Bend your own lines. But her shoulders tensed, the weight settling heavy. I felt it too, the scrutiny like barnacles crusting the hull, slowing our rhythm. We stood joint against it, though, me at her side through the stairs, a quiet front. One noon, as the crew gathered for chowder break, hands linked brief under the bench, hidden from view but solid. Her palm rough against mine, thumb tracing my knuckle once, anchor in the murmur. No words, just the press, breaths sinking like in the cabin storm. It held us, that touch, against the tide of doubt. Scars fade, I thought then, watching the pink line on her arm pale under sun. The gash mended, skin knitting whole. But bonds deepen, roots twisting under soil, stronger for the pull. Our nearness wasn't wound deep anymore. It ran to bone, unyielding as the wren's keel. Small rebellion came in pieces, defiant glances traded over the work. That night, after Tom's intrusion, we shared a meal at the dockside shack. Simple. Clams steamed with potatoes. No one else's eyes. She forked a bite, gray gaze meeting mine across the rickety table, unwavering. Let him mutter, she said low, foot hooking mine under the bench. Heat rose in the touch, subtle fire against the chill. I nodded, spoon scraping bowl, the act bold in its quiet. Two women claiming space in a town that portioned it small. Laughter slipped out once, over a spilled shell, her mouth quirking defiant. The whispers outside faded, just us in the lantern glow, choosing near over isolation. Internal resolve hardened in me those days, churning like waves on rock. Choose this, I told myself, in the quiet hours, mending nets alone. Her grit, the salt-shared pull, over easy paths back to the city. No more drifting solo, hiding wants under labor. This devotion, born of stitches and storms, outweighed the town's drag. Her hand in mine, brief or not, felt like home ground, solid under shifting planks. But the final haul loomed, rough seas testing our tether, winds rising sharp. The final haul came on a day when the sky hung low and bruised, winds whipping off the Atlantic like knives. We'd pushed out early, the wren cutting through chop that built fast, whitecaps foaming against the hull. Riley stood at the wheel, her scar a faint shadow under rolled sleeves, gray eyes scanning the swell. The crew was light, just us and one hand from Tom's boat, but the nets dragged heavy, promising a full hold if the sea held. I worked the lines aft, ropes biting palms, the boat pitching sharp. Whispers from shore felt distant now, drowned by the roar, but the tether between us pulled tight. Her glances back, my nods steady. Resolve burned in me, choosing this grind, her side, over the pull away. The line snapped without warning, a crack like bone under strain. We were mid-haul, the net heavy with cod and flounder, when the rope frayed at the winch. Old wear from storms, hidden until the surge. It whipped free, coils thrashing wild across the deck, the weight yanking Riley forward as she braced to secure it. Her boot slipped on the wet planks, body pitching over the rail, the old injury straining in her shoulder, arm twisting wrong. Pain flashed across her face, raw and unguarded, the scar pulling taut as she gripped the edge, waves clawing below. "Hold!" I shouted, heart slamming, dropping everything to lunge. The hand yelled too, but I was closer, boots sliding as I grabbed the rail beside her. Her fingers slipped, knuckles white on wood, the sea roaring up, hungry. I reached, arm hooking under hers, the muscle of her back warm and solid against my chest. "I've got you," I grunted, feet bracing wide, pulling with everything, the labor of weeks fueling the heave. She strained up, legs kicking foam, the old wound screaming in her gasp, but our grips locked, sweat mixing with spray. Inch by inch I hauled her aboard, her weight collapsing over the rail, bodies slamming deck in a tangle of limbs and salt. We lay there raw, breaths sinking ragged in the spray, the boat rocking violent around us. Her chest heaved against mine, face inches away, gray eyes wide with the edge we'd skirted. Water streamed from her hair, pooling cold between us. But heat rose where our bodies pressed, her hip to mine, arm draped heavy across my waist. The hand secured the loose net quick, engine rumbling to steady course. But the world narrowed to this. Her pulse thudding through wet shirt, my hand clutching her back, the ache of near loss twisting deep. Vulnerability hit like the waves, her flinch from the strain, my fear clawing gut. No words at first, just the sink, breaths pulling even, the storm's howl fading to our rhythm. "You're my anchor now," she said then, voice rough over the wind, eyes locking mine, unflinching. Truth spilled plain, no storm to hide it, devotion named in the salt sting, her hand finding my neck, thumb rough on jaw. I nodded, throat tight, the words sealing what the moon had started. "Always was," I whispered back, pulling her closer, the spray lashing us but the tether holding firm. Embrace came amid the foam, her body leaning full into mine, lips brushing collarbone through drenched fabric. No hesitation now, arms wrapping tight, the old injury forgotten in the press, heat building slow against the cold churn. She shifted, mouth finding mine fierce, salt and resolve in the kiss, world blurring to the taste of her, the grip that wouldn't yield. Devotion sealed there, on the pitching deck, bodies entwined against the rail, breaths hot and shared, the sea's rage no match for the pull we'd built. Her fingers clutched my shirt, knuckles grazing skin, scars meeting in the wet, a vow deeper than stitches. In that glimpse, future unspooled clear, nets mended side by side, lives entwined through halls and calms, the wren our ground amid the drift. Whispers would fade, bonds outlasting the tide. Her unyielding grip, my steady. Shore welcomed us at dusk, lanterns flickering like stars, but the story lingered in every line we coiled. Weeks after the final haul, the scar on Riley's arm had faded to a whisper, a thin white thread against her tan skin. No more tape, no iodine sting. We were back at the docks one crisp morning, the wren tied steady, when she took her first unassisted step across the uneven planks. No limp, no brace, just her boot hitting wood, sure, the old strain forgotten in the salt air. I watched from the rail, heart catching like a hook in line. She glanced back, gray eyes steady, a nod that said more than words. Whole again, not just the wound, but the weight she'd carried. The town shifted slow, like tide turning. Whispers died to murmurs, then nothing. Harlan clapped her shoulder one dawn, no edge in his voice, just a grunt about the next run. Tom's questions stopped cold after the haul, saw us pull through the rough maybe, or figured family held tighter than doubt. Doc hands offered nods now, shared silences over coffee mugs, eyes flicking away respectful. No fanfare, no welcomes loud, just the bend easing, barnacles loosening from the hull. Wives at the market passed clams without the narrow stare, a quiet acceptance woven into the daily grind. Riley stood taller in it, her presence claiming space unapologetic. You know this quiet fire, don't you? The kind that builds in the hush of hard days, flickering under skin like lantern glow in fog. It starts small, a touch in storm, a gaze held too long, and roots deep, unshakable as the bay's bottom. I've felt it pull in me, that warmth coiling tight, turning duty to something fiercer. You carry it too, maybe, in your own labors. The unspoken wants that bloom slow in resistant ground. Our days settled into devotion now. Hands deep in nets at dawn, fingers brushing over twine and scales. We'd coil side by side, her knee against mine on the bench, the rhythm sinking without thought. Eyes met over the mesh, hers gray and sure, mine tracing the lines of her face, the wind-tugged hair. No rush in it, just the steady weave, salt drying on skin, breaths mingling in the chill. Mornings on the water, she'd call the cast, and I'd haul with her, bodies leaning close against the roll. Evenings in the shed, mending frays, her laugh low over a slipped knot, my hand steadying hers brief. The pull thrummed constant, love etched in the calluses, the shared ache of lines pulled taut. Bittersweet hope lingered in the air, like fog lifting off the bay. Storms would pass again. Rough seas, town eyes sharpening maybe. But we'd hold, anchors in the drift. Her grip on the wheel, my hand at her back, the wren our steady ground. No easy promises, just the grit of it, the quiet vow in every haul. Losses still shadowed, her paws drown, my cities hollow. But they shaped us, not broke. We'd mend through, thread by thread, the fire warming the cold spaces. Love born of grit, that's what settled deep. Not the flash of city lights, but the slow burn of salt and strain. Vulnerability cracked open in cabin hush. Her resilience hooked me from the first bloodied dock, turning care to this. Devotion solid as the keel, unyielding in the tide. We'd built it together, wounds healed not just in flesh, but in the spaces between. And in the quiet after, watching her move free across the planks, I knew we'd keep holding, through whatever swell came next. Her hand slipped into mine at dawn, rough palm warm against the chill, the bay stretching endless before us. If you felt this quiet fire ignite, share your truths below. Subscribe for more stories of grit and devotion.